History, to the casual reader, is no more than a dry description of what has happened in the dead past, larded with the names and dates related to the events it records.
Cuyahoga River actually burned one summer because there was so much garbage in that river.
The public is demanding that the government protect the environment.
These holding tanks are part of an antiquated sewage system that continues to dump raw sewage directly into the water.
But to the discerning mind, history provides background and understanding, tracing the paths by which we have come from long ago beginnings to present realities.
This planet is threatened with destruction, and we who live in it with death.
Here is a problem which transcends our particular generation.
Much that is today is made clear by what was yesterday. What we are, and much of what we will be, depends on the people and events that are now a part of history, whether we speak of people, nations, or races, families, or corporations.
We believe it's very realistic to expect that within the next 100 years, the amount of carbon dioxide naturally in the air will be doubled by all the fossil fuels that we will be burning.
Someday, we heard today, the world will be a better place if it listens and acts.
Pride springs from history. Inspiration is drawn from it, and those who read it with understanding are better able to deal with the problems of the present for knowing the past.
In 1947, an MIT professor and brilliant sanitary engineer named Thomas Camp recruited Herman Dresser and Jack McKee to form a world-changing partnership. Their goal? To provide environmental consulting services to clients facing monumental public health crises. More than a decade before Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, the book that launched the environmental movement, and the burning of the Cuyahoga River would bring pollution onto the main stage of American policy, these trailblazing engineers were building a company that would be pivotal to addressing the greatest threats to planet Earth for generations to come. This is the journey of CDM Smith. Dr. Thomas Camp was Associate Professor of Sanitary Engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology from 1929 to 1944. Today, his book, Water and Its Impurities, is archived in the Smithsonian Institute. Through his brilliant thinking, he set the tone for CDM Smith's innovative solutions, a tone that continues to distinguish the firm today.
Tom Camp was a world-renowned environmental engineer, viewed as one of the experts in the field of environmental engineering, and there'd be no doubt about that. Tom Camp was more reserved, but he was absolutely brilliant.
Camp was a brain. Camp technically was just a brain, and he loved research. And so we built the lab, and he did his research, and he was happy as hell doing that.
Hydraulics, water resource hydraulics, pipeline hydraulics, and Dr. Camp was way out on the leading edge on a lot of that. The Camp curves are still in use today. That's a hydraulic curve.
Herman Dresser was a hard-working structural design expert. He conceived the Dresser formulas, which were commonly used by engineers to determine moments, thrusts, and shears for semi-elliptical sewers. Not just a technical expert, Dresser was business-minded and people-focused. He established the company's high standards for quality in both work and conduct.
Herman Dresser was the heart and soul of CDM, the carrying company. He was the heart and soul of that.
Jack McKee earned his PhD in sanitary engineering from Harvard University and served in World War II with the Army Corps of Engineers. After completing his military service, he joined up with Camp and Dresser. He was organized, always prepared, a great writer and mentor, and held high offices in professional societies and state, federal, and commissions boards.
Jack McKee professorial, also very brilliant technically.
Together, they pioneered drinking water treatment technologies, advanced approaches in water quality protection and groundwater recharge, and established the firm's enduring culture of innovation and ingenuity. Camp, Dresser, and McKee's early work consisted of small, New England-based water and wastewater engineering projects supported by a team of no more than 8 people at any one time. CDM Smith built the first water treatment plant for the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, the firm's first client and the start of a working relationship that endures today.
We've done some remarkable projects over the years in the city of Cambridge. We did the award-winning water purification facility, which is the first application of ozone and dissolved air flotation in Massachusetts and actually in New England.
Meanwhile, growing public awareness about the dangers of pollution and an outcry from experts warning of climate change spurred monumental new regulations and funding for more innovative projects.
It was probably the Clean Water Act that launched us into wastewater treatment. I mean, when you drop $7 or $8 billion into a market that's been doing $300 million a year, you're going to have some growth.
The 70s and 80s saw emerging legislation around clean air and water. CDM Smith worked with the EPA to create the first comprehensive guidelines for U.S. water pollution control facilities. CDM Smith's early work placed the firm at the center of solving some of the greatest environmental threats of the age, like the pollution in Boston Harbor.
Tidelands support many forms of marine life. Shellfishing used to be an important activity here. This has ceased in many areas because of excessive water pollution.
Boston was a very, very polluted harbor. They had the philosophy that on the outgoing tide, they could discharge the solids from this treatment and it would carry it out into the ocean. And it did. The problem is on the incoming tide, they brought it right back in. In 1983, they started a facilities plan to put secondary treatment of all the wastewater from the Boston area. CDM won that job, and I was the project manager for MWRA. We met all of the 31 court-ordered milestones, came in $350 million under budget. Very successful project. More importantly, it worked. The harbor's clean. The day I left, the last day I worked for MWRA, I took a water taxi ride to Deer Island, and as we left the island, there were porpoises swimming in the wake of the boat. We felt pretty good about that. So it was a wonderful experience, and it worked. It worked.
Back in 1970, CDM's partnership had incorporated. They appointed a dynamic CEO, Joe Lawler, who was never satisfied with the status quo.
Joe Lawler was really the guy that changed that firm. I mean, he was the guy that saw the potential when the environment was starting to become a critical flaw. He was bigger than life itself. He was about 6'4". Lawler was the guy that got us sitting down planning on what we wanted to do, where we were going to go, who was working on what, and then we would all get assignments and plans, and we'd have a master plan of how we wanted to grow the firm. Most of all, I think it created a more family type of orientation. And if he hadn't been there, I don't know if we ever would have made all the acquisitions that we made. And that's what really moved us across the country, because up until we were a partnership, we were strictly a New England firm.
Back then, Camp, Dresser, McKee, we were a sanitary engineering firm. And there was always this question, what does that mean? Are we always going to be a, quote, sanitary engineering firm, or can we do something different? Lawler had a vision. You know, I mean, Lawler said, no, we're not going to be a New England-only sanitary firm. We're going to grow.
But there was always a culture that we were very bright. We had a lot to offer. And if we had effort put forth to build high-value relationships, combined with the technical services we could provide, we should win most of the time. And in my experience, when we really absolutely put our mind to it that we were going to win, we would win a high percentage of work.
Under Joe Lawler's leadership and that of his successors, Joe Heaney, Bob Marini, and then Tom Furman, who joined the firm as part of an acquisition, CDM Smith grew organically while also making acquisitions around the world. Adding expertise in the areas of solid waste, remediation, mechanical, structural, and geotechnical engineering, construction, and transportation widened the firm's service offerings. CDM Smith's passion to solve infrastructure challenges expanded beyond water, and those challenges were not confined to New England, but present in communities globally.
Acquisitions, complemented with our organic growth, really shape our capability and advancement in markets that we see as priorities. We have a simple principle. It's based on geographic need or capability need. So it's not based on revenue growth like you might see in some of our public or private equity competitors, because that's really not the driver for us. It really comes down to, do we add something to the company that allows us to serve our market or clients, provide services that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise, and that it accelerates that path.
From then on, we acquired in most places, but in many places we built from scratch. And that was by getting a job, setting up an office, and then building from that.
We were well known in the New England area, and it was just moving some of those people to the west that said, yeah, the train is leaving the station.
I moved Randy Rogers everywhere. I moved him from Detroit to Dallas, from Dallas to Minneapolis, from Minneapolis back to Houston. I moved that guy so many places, I'm surprised he can remember his last name.
CDM was looking to expand in the West and found this little perfect nugget of talent in Southern California, and it was JSME. And we were about a 45-person firm and just a sweet spot in water and wastewater. And so it was a perfect fit for CDM to expand in. We walked into the building, the national headquarters. Every floor had different skill sets. I mean, I'm coming from a place with 45 people, and we all knew each other, we all grew up together. And here's this behemoth of a firm with cadre of talent in every corner of this building, and it was this heartbeat of the firm, and I just felt like I've made it. It was great.
One of the first international projects that CDM Smith did was in the 60s in Bogota, actually. It was a water master plan that Dr. Camp was engaged directly with. And the funny thing is that in the 60s, CDM Smith did many projects in Latin America, usually funded by the World Bank or other agencies. And these were projects that were executed, and then we would leave, and we were always seen as these foreign firm that will come, provide some guidance, and then go. Now we are not a foreign entity anymore. We are actually considered locals, and that has been a dramatic change in the way we do work and how we are perceived by our clients.
We felt we needed a geotechnical capability, and we were looking at firms in Germany. Jesper was a true geotechnical firm, and we fell in love with the individuals. The senior people were very talented. The Leaning Tower of Pisa, they were part of the team that moved that back 11 inches to keep it from falling over. So they did some really exotic, ground freezing was their capability. And they were very, very good at it.
There was a growing awareness in the industry that global infrastructure was aging and in need of great repair and reinvestment. It was only natural that CDM Smith's commitment to smart solutions expand beyond the world of water to include proactive, sustainable, and environmentally sound approaches to moving people and goods. One of the biggest shifts in the firm's service offerings came when transportation was formally added.
What are we doing? They're both civil engineers. We need to be in the transportation. We had some really talented people building that practice from within, but it didn't have a legitimacy to it. It didn't have it. It's Camp Dressler McKee, the water firm, going to the transportation market. So we really needed a name to add to the package that had a transportation background. We didn't know a lot about Wilbur Smith, but Wilbur Smith was the Dr. Camp of the transportation world.
In 2006 to 2009, I was the Chief Strategy Officer for the public sector for the nation. And that's when we decided we needed to do an acquisition and got Wilbur Smith along. And now we can dominate on so many different fronts. We can dominate, as we continue to dominate since 1947, in the world of water and wastewater, environmental services, but now we can dominate on the transportation market, which we never could before, and we can do it with credibility.
As CDM Smith was adding services and growing its geographic footprint through the decades, the global pollution crisis gained momentum in Congress as disasters such as the Love Canal contamination and the cryptosporidium outbreak rocked communities around the United States.
This equipment will be used to start the long-awaited cleanup of the Love Canal area. This week, work crews and heavy equipment started clearing land so a drain pipe and trench system can be installed.
The purpose of that trench system is to drain away toxic chemicals which have seeped to the surface, contaminating this neighborhood, forcing more than 200 families to flee their homes.
People were getting sick, and people were tired of it. And so industries were causing the pollution. And Congress decided to tax the industries so they could create a fund to deal with cleaning up with these sites, especially the abandoned sites. So we started to work for the EPA, and as I look over the span, it really did provide a trajectory from working for a few regions across the company until now we actually have contracts that support all 10 EPA regions to do not only investigation and design work, but also to do remediation work. Since that time, we have just exploded in the clients we have, not only with environment, but in water and facilities and internationally.
Cryptosporidiasis is the disease that comes from Cryptosporidium. So it's a diarrheal disease. If you're immunocompromised, it can be deadly. In Milwaukee back in 1993, over 100 immunocompromised individuals lost their lives. Many more were sickened. That outbreak was the defining moment to advance the drinking water industry to prevent that from happening again. It led to regulations specifically on water treatment with respect to cryptosporidium removal. Cryptosporidium is chlorine resistant, so the traditional conventional technologies for treatment don't work with crypto. So that introduced ozone, UV, and a couple of other technologies to deal with that issue. I was able to work with teams to work on programs, demonstration projects, to develop a new type of ozone dissolution system called the J-tube.
At one time, I can remember Chris Schultz and I tallying up the amount of installed ozone capacity that we personally, CDM Smith, had compared to our competitors. And at one time, we commanded about 75% of the entire installed ozone capacity in the United States.
CDM Smith continued to innovate on the cutting edge of technology and project delivery to address client needs as new concerns and public health issues continued to arise. A spirit that endured from Camp's hydraulic curve to advanced ozone treatment to one-stop design-build delivery and funding resources as the firm helped communities around the world address global infrastructure challenges.
The Marina Barrage project is sustainability from a water resources standpoint. Singapore is very wet with rain, so flooding is a problem. That's why the dam can be lowered to maximize the amount of water coming over the dam into the ocean, and then when desired, it lifts to basically create the raw water. So we've got water resources from stormwater management, we've got water supply.
We got in the design-build process so that we could solve clients' problems. They wanted things delivered faster. They didn't want debate anymore between engineers and contractors. They're working together to a common end, and that was what a lot of clients were looking for speed, for cost savings, and for a more integrated team.
When you look at that decision that we made to get into the design-build market, we saw where the market was going. Having that that attitude to do what we have to do so the firm's better, not today, not tomorrow, but way out. Couple that with the best people in the industry, nobody's better than CDM Smith.
When I look at what we've done in the disruptive technology, where we look beyond what is current and try to find something new. We never stop reinventing what we can do to solve the problems on this planet.
Instead of a manual process of like looking through pages of data, and it used to be all handwritten records, then it becomes spreadsheets. Now we can look at things spatially, we can look at trends over time, we can look at multi-parameters at the same time and see how things are changing. So it's just so much more accurate and relevant in terms of processing data and drawing good conclusions.
As the firm continues its mission of applying cutting-edge technology and ingenious thinking to the biggest challenges known to humanity, including man-made crises and natural disasters, the greatest source of pride for the people of CDM Smith is the effect their work has had on the individuals in the communities they serve. It defines the spirit of CDM Smith.
The Libby Superfund site in Libby, Montana, they were dying of asbestos contamination. And over the 20+ years we supported that community, we were able to work with EPA and remove the asbestos and make it such a better place for the next generation.
Take Bangladesh, for example. I mean, cholera was everywhere. Well, we went in and we started them on groundwater and started putting in these single tube wells in a lot of places, which improved the health in that country significantly. We improved the life wherever we went.
Janelle Rogers, she was in Alaska, one of the few female engineers working up there in remote villages north of the Arctic Circle. They've had serious public health issues with waterborne diseases and skin diseases in particular, because they don't have running water. We were on a prop plane that was loaded with cargo with 2 passenger seats. And from there, we took a snow machine to get from the airport to a house. Our approach was to use a ceramic pot filter. I was involved on a project to work with a company down in Guatemala that set up a factory to produce these ceramic pot filters for both urban and rural communities. And then I suggested that we consider that simple household technology for this project in Alaska. So it's the first transfer of technology like that, I think, from hot countries like Guatemala to a cold climate like Alaska.
So in Newark, when we were able to pull the data apart and start to look at it spatially, that's when we realized there was a real large problem in one part of their system. The lead levels were extremely high. So for the first time in my career of, almost 40 years, we actually had to make a public health recommendation. The city took that recommendation very, very seriously, and they distributed like 30,000 lead filters to their customers in a remarkably short period of time. The long-term permanent solution was to remove the source of lead, so to remove the lead service lines. And so in 3 years, they've replaced over 20,000 lead service lines. Some communities would say we need 20 years to do something like that, but they just did it, and it was just a remarkable experience.
One of the greatest sense of pride for me is the fact that CDM Smith has made a huge difference to our planet, and that continues to be central to every single thing we do.
There's no doubt that the world looks different today than when Camp, Dresser, and McKee first gave their names to a new sanitary engineering consultancy. But while the challenges the world faces have evolved, they are the same at their core. And as other firms have fallen by the wayside, CDM Smith continues to listen, think, and deliver brilliant solutions every single day.
Some people get to go to work, and I'm not sure what higher level mission they're supporting, and they might not know that either. But for us, we get to go to work and make things better that are really important to the sustainability of our global community. It's truly profound.
PFAS is all over, it's everywhere. CDM Smith's on the forefront of dealing with PFAS contamination. We're building treatment plants to deal with the drinking water, but also what's really exciting is our staff are developing technologies not only to remove PFAS from water, but to destroy it.
The safe level of lead in drinking water is 0. No lead. There's no safe level of lead in drinking water. You know, the water community needs to address this issue no matter what your particular situation is. So it's really important because of the public health aspects of it.
I think seawater salination is going to be part of the solution for the difficult challenges that we have right now when it comes to the drought, combined with water reuse and optimizing the use of other water resources. So the reality is these days we need to do more with less.
My class at Merrimack, the first day of class, I gave them, you're the 0 class. In your career, you must eliminate CO2 emissions. Take them to 0. You must take traffic deaths to 0. We should be getting to 0 construction safety deaths, and there's no reason why we can't do that as we move forward. We engineers do really wonderful things.
You know, we're lucky because we're working in a field that we're making a decent living, and yet we are helping the environment. We leave a client better than it was before. I think that we should get inner satisfaction from knowing that our works and our experience and knowledge is helping mankind to improve.
We don't give up. We don't settle on, we don't rest on our laurels, ever. So to me, you know, when we think about the 75-year history of our firm, I don't think of it as 75 years. I think of it as +1, +1, +1, because we always are reinventing what we can do to make it even better. The history is only a starting point. The future is where we're going.
I had the great fortune to have an opportunity to do a co-op here and realized it was what I love to do. People care. They care about you as an individual. They care about your ability to see yourself years down the line. We want you to find your passion if you haven't found it yet, and then enable you to do that every single day. Because it's not just what the company needs, it's what you need. And when we put those two things together, the potential is unleashed. The success that you feel is unmatched. What excites me about what's ahead for CDM Smith is there is a global recognition for the need and importance of what we do. You've never heard more about aging infrastructure, resiliency and sustainability, and the fact that as global population grows, the demand for those infrastructure services also grows. Our founders, our 75 years of history, they set the foundation for where we're heading. What we have the great opportunity to do now is make sure that the propulsion is fast, is nimble, and is meaningful. And that the next generation, 75, 100, 200 years from now, is grounded in CDM Smith innovating with the best people in the industry, solving the most impactful challenges to our built and natural environments. The fact that we are more aware of our impacts on the environment, but also more capable to understanding solutions to mitigating them. And if we stay on that course, our future couldn't be brighter and our impact in the industry couldn't be greater.